But kind people find that they are cruel. Brave men discover that they are really cowards. Confronted with their true selves, most men run away screaming.
This video is not for my usual audience. I feel like I've said that for the past few, but we're living in really weird times. Anyway, sometimes I worry that I'm just screaming into the void when I do this kind of thing, but you know, I had to try. Also, hi, it's been a minute since I actually made one of these. We're gonna get right to it today by starting nice and simple. What does it mean to be a man? Like I said, nice and simple, no big existential questions today. Different cultures around the world define manhood in different ways, but there's a lot to be learned from coming-of-age ceremonies and various traditional rites of passage, especially some of the common features found across them. Many indigenous nations around the world have first hunt and other land-based ceremonies intended to teach young people cultural protocols, respect, and responsibility. Inuit men, for example, are often responsible for hunts that feed their whole communities, and it's important that boys learn about this process. For boys of the Anishinaabe nation in the Amazon, coming of age includes wearing a specially designed glove full of angry bullet ants, taking their stings without flinching to prove their readiness for the pains and challenges of manhood. In Māori tradition, coming of age is shown through a sacred tattooing practice, where young people celebrate their identities and ancestral connections through art worn in their skin. A painful process, but a beautiful one that signifies belonging. Going back in time to speak to my own heritage for a moment, traditional Celtic coming-of-age ceremonies often included community input, with the rest of the community rallying around young men to remind them of their place, their identity, and what they brought to their collective. I could go on about this all day, and I really encourage you to read about these traditions in the words of the people who carry them. I personally think a huge part of the reason why Euro-Western men have been struggling recently, the men who make up the majority of my audience, is because we have been separated from ceremony and tradition and these building blocks of identity. Which is to say, yeah, there actually is a part of me that agrees with the manosphere guys who say that the antidote to male loneliness is a return to tradition. I just completely disagree with the bullshit conclusions they draw from this, but that is a rant for another day. For today, I want to point to the major themes of what it means to be a man across different cultures and time periods, because there are quite a few commonalities. Carrying on traditions, learning from those who came before you, providing for your community and understanding your place within it. It is hard to define manhood as any one thing. It is many things, but taken together, these all fall under the broader category of service to others. Withstanding fear and pain to protect others, hunting and survival skills to provide for others, responsibility to serve something bigger than yourself, and accountability when you fail in this. And this is where we really get to the meat and potatoes of today's video, because a lot of the podcasters and streamers who enabled the Trump regime's rise to power are suddenly trying to backpedal now that shit's hitting the fan. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that we talk about masculinity a lot here, so that is why I am approaching from this angle for this topic today. Because a big part of the reason why these guys have amassed the followings and thus the power that they have is because they appeal to young men, and this is reflected in voting patterns. This is reflected in the way that these guys can direct people to support various political ideologies. They say jump, and their listeners say how high. Also, to be completely real, I am crashing out, y'all. I am so fucking done. I am so tired of living in a world where people with power, reach, and money get to fuck around while the rest of us have to find out. It's like one long episode of White Lotus that you can't just turn off. Where the podcast bros are concerned, I think they are finally getting a taste, a small taste, of the find out. And I think it's important that we talk about this. I think it's important that we talk about the psychological mechanisms that got us here, and more importantly, how we can get out.
They put a video of mine that I'd made for somebody in a parking lot, probably like maybe a year and a half ago, just jokingly. They put it in at the front of this Department of Homeland Security, like trap beat. I think they had like, I'm not sure if they had like young boy lyrics or whatever they had. And the video was a girl had walked up to me in a parking lot and she had said, "Hey, my friend just got deported. What do you have to say? Do you have a message?" I can't remember what it was. And I was just like, bye. So this video goes mega viral, 25 million, 30 million views. It's everywhere. And the front of that Homeland Security video, it's on the White House thing. It's on everything. It's everywhere. And the first 10 seconds of it are me. I woke up the next morning to a text from a high government official saying, "Hey, if you need some extra security in your neighborhood or some extra police cars on patrol, let me know. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And look, I'm all for like the board. I'm all for tighter borders. I'm all for like accurate knowing who's on. I'm all for knowing who is in a country. I'm all for knowing what's in the cupboard of a society. I think you should know every item on the log. I think it should be known, right? I do. Now, how do you get there? That's the bigger question. And we don't have to discuss that today, right? It's not about that.
Back on it, I really, really wish I never got into like politics. And I feel like that's a cool thing to like talk about. Obviously, it's like, you know, I just kind of like, I know y'all didn't like that era at all, except for the Trump like stream. Obviously, at the end of the day, it was the president. Like, but like now that I look back at it, it's like, damn, like so many people just tie me to it, and now it's just like, fuck, like no matter what, they don't even get to know who I am because they don't like even want to. Oh, you did the stream with Trump.
You see what your boy's doing? You voted for this. I'm like, I voted for none of this. He's doing the exact opposite of everything I voted for.
Yeah.
I want him to stop the wars. He's funding them. I want him to shrink spending, reduce the budget. He's increasing it. It's like everything that he said he's going to do, except sending immigrants back. And now he's even flip-flopped on that, which I kind of like. But he's like, oh, well, we kind of need the people working in restaurants, and we need our farmers. It's like everything that he said that he was going to do, that he campaigned.
ICE raids are fucking nuts, man. Watching this protest on television, it's like...
Do you think the raids are nuts?
All of it's nuts.
I think both sides are taking it a little too hard.
Well, I don't think if the Trump administration, if they're running and they said, we're going to go to Home Depot, and we're going to arrest all the people at Home Depot. We're going to go to construction sites, and we're going to just, like, tackle people at constructions. I don't think anybody would have signed up for that. They said, we're going to get rid of the criminals and the gang members first, right? And now we're seeing, like, Home Depots get raided. Like, that's crazy.
I want you to keep this theme of manhood as service to others in mind while we go through the problems here. And while I doubt Joe Rogan, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, or Andrew Schultz, or any of the guys who agree with them or take a similar approach will ever see this, I'm going to address them directly all the same. Gentlemen, now that the US is devolving into full-blown fascism, you guys are attempting to absolve yourselves rather than face responsibility for helping create this shit. Because you can't handle the truth that your actions prove, that you're not as centrist as you think you are, that you're not just curious, salt-of-the-earth guys who are engaging equally with differing opinions, that voting based solely on vibes of who seems like the cooler group of people, at least by the standards of a 12-year-old boy despite being a grown-ass man, wasn't the right way to do things, that your critics were right, and maybe you should have listened, that you were an easy mark and you got played. You laundered and endorsed a fascist. You did that. And if you want a Zuko-level redemption arc, you're going to need some Zuko-level anti-imperial action. It starts with taking some fucking responsibility. Firstly, I have my personal hang-ups about inflicting pain as a rite of passage, but watching your bumbling buffoonery actually helps me understand the reasoning behind these ceremonies, so thanks for that, I guess. Because you guys only care about the dangers of the Trump regime now that it's affecting you personally, whether it's because of the diddler on the roof's economy, losing your supporters, or because there's still some humanity in that husk of a heart and the violence is happening where you can't as easily look away. If you've never had to find out, fucking around is really easy. You were acting in total self-interest, you were gambling with other people's rights and safety, and now that the chickens are coming home to roost, suddenly you have regrets. Were you going to commit as long as it wasn't hurting you personally? As long as it wasn't happening in a place where you had to see it? Second, claiming that you didn't vote for this and that you don't support the regime's actions proves that you ran on vibes and did absolutely no research. Again, just fucking irresponsible. Project 2025 was available for you to read, yet apparently none of you did. Trump was very clear in his intentions. We even had a whole first presidency for you to look at, but I guess the profit from platforming their lies was just too juicy. You put yourselves first. Again. This time betraying the fact that you couldn't even be bothered to do the most basic research into these issues before aligning yourselves and thus your audiences with a whole-ass political movement. The fact that you are now trying to feign ignorance further demonstrates your lack of responsibility with the platforms that you have. It's disgusting, and you should be fucking ashamed. Finally, countless people were out here telling the truth about the alt-right and how you were enabling them. This was not just a mistake. You chose not to listen. You chose not to seek out perspectives from people who were struggling in ways that you're not. In a word, you are selfish. Your failure isn't that you were bamboozled, it's that you jammed your heads so far up your own asses you couldn't hear anyone else over the sound of huffing your own farts. Claiming that you did not know is not an excuse. It is a slimy attempt to avoid the actual problem, your self-obsession and total lack of listening skills. And before anybody jumps in with, well, they were just having conversations, I will pretend for the sake of argument that ignorance is an excuse. It's not, but like I said, sake of argument. If we are leaning on other people to fill our knowledge gaps, we still have a responsibility to make careful selections about who we choose in that role. When we start trying to fill the void of ignorance with shit, we just end up full of shit. Fellas, fascism achieves power by relying on weak-willed men who are so self-serving that they will mindlessly throw themselves at the feet of anyone who meets their personal needs, cost to others, be damned. Your actions have shown that you are all about easy wins, servicing a system that promises you personal gain while the people around you suffer. Because, hey, it's emotionally challenging to consider the needs of people whose realities poke holes in your worldview. It's easier to just sell everyone else out than have to do the terrifying and demanding emotional labor of self-reflection and listening. Working on yourself is uncomfortable. Toughen the fuck up. If, by some small chance, any of you see this, I have some suggestions about how you can do better. Number 1. Admit you were wrong. Own it. You made a huge mistake, very publicly. Reversing the damage requires an equally as public acknowledgement of how you fucked up. Number 2. Actually platform people who experience state violence and know what they're talking about. Encourage your fan base to listen to these people, to challenge themselves even when it's uncomfortable to hear the truth. Number 3. Openly condemn the GOP, particularly Trump himself. Criticize him clearly and directly and encourage your fans to do the same. Have a goddamn spine. Because silence at this point, trying to backpedal at this point, just betrays how scared you are and how little you deserve the influence that you have. And finally, number 4, use the wealth that you've amassed through selling out to support the people most impacted by what is happening. Because without real, tangible action that acknowledges the harm you've done, owns your mistakes, and commits to making things better, your apparent regret is nothing but a show. You're just attempting to save your brand, whether it is the public-facing one that pays your bills or the internal one that helps you sleep at night. When the current is flowing toward violence, going with the flow is not a neutral position. If you are not swimming upstream, you are part of the movement, and when you have a platform of millions of followers, you don't get to just lazy river your way around. To the fans of these men, especially the dudes, not only can you do better, you have a responsibility to do better. Because real men do not dominate other people or exert power over them. They uplift them, even at personal cost. There are absolutely personal costs in writing the course that these men helped create. The measure of your character is whether or not you are willing to take that on. Being a man means protecting others. This means owning your mistakes, putting your interests second, and having the nerve to stand up to injustice and violence. To enable injustice and violence. To punch down, to mock or dismiss people who are being hurt, makes you a weak-willed, bootlicking pawn. Anyone who is more threatened by women's agency and power than violence against them, who is more uncomfortable about queer people existing than the policing of bodies, who is more afraid of being called a racist than literal racism in action, who only regrets his politics when they backfire, has lost the plot of what it means to be a man. These men are not role models. They are cautionary tales, and if you are a young man who has been swept up in this ideology, that is why you feel so alone. They have separated you from your responsibility to support the very same people who divisive politicians have convinced you to hate and blame for your pain. But we're over half a year into this shit, and these people are getting hurt real bad. So I gotta ask, has your life gotten better? MAGA men and their sympathizers sold out, and this is where it got all of us. That alone speaks to the power that these guys have. Think of the good they could do if they actually wanted to. I can guarantee that there is no amount of wealth or man-made power in existence that can compensate for the emptiness that you feel from not helping other people, people who have less than you, whether that is measured in power, wealth, safety, or rights. It's why this ketamine-powered wax figure has achieved nothing in the way of relationships beyond reaching unprecedented levels of dumped. He has everything material that anyone could ever want, and he is miserable, destined to die alone and hated. You cannot buy fulfillment, you cannot take personal empowerment through force. These are things that you cultivate through cooperation and care. If you have been buried in self-serving, individualistic messaging and you are still feeling anxious, empty, and detached, you need to get out. Consider this your invitation to do so. Because if all of this effort to help yourself hasn't led to any improvement, maybe it is time to start helping others. If you want to practice this, I have been working with my friend Maysara in Gaza to support his family. Some of you probably saw my previous video talking about this. Their home in the north was destroyed. They have nothing to go back to, so they are looking to relocate to Egypt so they can start a new life. I said it in the short video that I made before this one. I'm going to say it again here. If you got something out of this video, if you have gotten something out of my channel more broadly, that is how I'm going to ask that you show your appreciation. And please know how far it goes. Most of the dudes that I have criticized here could actually meet this campaign goal and probably several others in a single day and not even feel it financially, but they won't. Because they have lost sight of who they are and why they are here. You do not have to be like them. When you tie value to hierarchies and financial power, only a few people ever get to really have value. But you are valuable already. I know that sounds like an after-school special platitude, but I mean it. Every single one of us is, just by being here, just by drawing breath on this earth. You are so much more than just being the bestest boy with the loudest voice, specifically in a landscape full of outrage and hollow admiration. Volunteer. Help your community. Listen to other people's stories just to understand, not to refute, not to respond. Give something to someone who has less than you. That is how you will learn what it feels like to really matter to other people. A man's responsibility is to support, to protect, to help others, and to give back. And the measure of his character is how well he owns his mistakes if he ever loses sight of that. Do with that knowledge what you will, but regardless, thanks for watching. Hey all, if you made it all the way to the end of this, thank you for sticking around. I wanted to take a second and just say thank you so much to everyone who has already donated to the Al-Ashal Families campaign. It's just, I'm really blown away, honestly, by how much the previous video blew up, at least by the standards of my channel, so thank you all so much. We're already over halfway to the goal, which is amazing, and we couldn't have done it without your support. I cannot thank the donors enough, and I also really want to say thank you to the people who are unable to donate but shared the previous video, left comments, engaged, and just generally showed support, because that really helps as well. I also wanted to drop a brief caveat about the contents of this video and the point being made. This video is focused on men's identity formation, social roles, and sense of self. Being a man personally, one who talks to other men about this kind of thing, I'm really tired of seeing all of my brothers out there being fed lies by people who just want to reduce us to drones of war, labor, and consumption. Service to community is not something that is bound by gender. I know, that's very important to specify, but it is something that a lot of men specifically have lost touch with. That is an empty space that I think we need to acknowledge, and I think we really need to talk about, so that was the goal here. Anyway, it is late, and I am tired. So, thanks again for watching, go hydrate, and dog bless.